Hi, Loren Crawford, here for another share. Today I want to talk to you about stability. When we hear about yoga in the modern context anyway, we often hear about flexibility. You know, everyone thinks that yoga is related to the big fancy poses and being flexible, and if you can't flexible, I can't do yoga. But I'm going to say let's park flexibility. Flexibility may or may not happen in your body. A lot of that has to do with your genetics and maybe years of practice, right? But let's look at stability. Let's look at how your practice ultimately should be bringing stability in your life. And we'll start with the physical, and then we'll talk a little bit more about your daily living and maybe the metaphysical. Stability. How do we use our mat practice, so what we do physically in yoga, to cultivate stability? And I learned when I was doing my master training that some of us who've been doing yoga for a very long time actually don't have a lot of stability in our bodies. And again, that's that thing about hyperflexibility in some cases. I always argue that it starts in the pelvic region, right? That we need to have a strong awareness of stability in this part of the anatomy. If we don't, we end up hinging a lot on our hips, and that becomes a crutch, if you will, to not having a strong and stable pelvic floor and a strong and stable core. It's very easy to dip into your back and just hinge from your hips. So on your forward folds, for example, or in your back bends. But what we want to do is think about, how do I get this part of my anatomy, this whole pelvic structure, stable? So I'm going to suggest a few things. So in your standing position, in this system, we do our joints nicely stacked. So none of this big toes together business. So ankles under knees, knees under the hips. Legs are nicely engaged. They're active, though not locked, so the knees aren't locked. And there's a slight inner rotation of the thighs. Very subtle. Slight inner rotation of the thighs. And at the same time, the sacrum, that clunky bone structure in the base of your spine, draws into the body maybe just a millimeter. So that very subtle inner rotation of the thigh and the sacrum drawing in ever so slightly. And then you feel this engagement. It's not rigid and super strong, but it's a connection, right? You feel this stability in that whole pelvic region. The lower abdominal wall is slightly engaged, and that protects your lower back. And then we maintain that stability in the pelvic region in all of our poses. So if we're doing a back bend, for example, we would make sure that we don't collapse into the lower back and just let this get all loose, right? We maintain that stability, drawing the tailbone slightly forward and being firm in your lower belly, stabilizing the lower back. Otherwise, that hypermobility is not going to be helpful. Similarly, in a forward fold, rather than, again, locking up the knees, hinging from the hips and dipping into your lower back, and you notice how the seat sticks out, you actually have a soft bend in the knees and lengthen that lower back as you move forward, engaging these muscles here, stability in the pelvic region, and then that's going to start to facilitate a strengthening of the back, of the core, and stabilizing that whole area. Stability in the pelvic structure. When the pelvic structure is stable, it becomes an anchor in our lives. A lot of the stuff that we deal with mentally, emotionally, in terms of the subtle anatomy, is down in this region, right? It's not all about the heart. When we have that stability in the root area, in the second chakra area, and up into the navel area, it can start to help us move through some of the issues that we address in our lives. Now, a posture that you can do in a daily practice, and I do this every single day, and for those of you that do classes with me, you know I teach it almost every single class, is Parshvottanasana. With this, you know, it's a 3/4 stride, feet are on 2 separate tracks, and we make sure that front knee isn't locked. So there's just a little bit of a bend in there, and you might shake a little bit. I sometimes call this the wobbly pose. You might shake a little bit when you don't jam up that knee. Jamming up the knee is a release valve, or yoga cheating, right? Not locking up the knee. Hands can just be around the sacrum hip area. And then from here, we fold gently forward to wherever we can comfortably go, keeping the length and the space in the torso, so I don't drop my sternum, my breastbone, into my belly. I keep length and space. And of course, there's options in how you do this, right? You could work with the opposite arm of the extended leg out front and do that variation. If you're stronger in your lower back, you could work with both arms and just take it deep into the fold. However you do it, you're exhaling on your fold and inhaling the way up. And then you can hold it wherever you get in your furthest point. Maybe the hands drop down to the floor, maybe the torso softens over the leg. And just rest here. And anchoring through the balls of the big toes and the inner heels, drawing energy up through your inner thighs into the pelvic floor. This is super, super stabilizing. It will prepare you for a lot of the other big challenging physical poses, and especially the balance poses. And after you've had a few quiet breaths there, hands can float back to the seat, or you can use the arms in whichever variation. And you inhale, lift the chest. Notice we don't roll up, we come up nice and strong and step out. And so that pose will show you a few things. It will show you irregularities in your breath. One day the breath might be super steady through it, and other days it might be shaking. And it will show you stability in your body. Your body might quiver a little bit some days, other days it's super solid, or your mind might be distracted, right? The Parshvottanasana is a really good barometer in terms of stability. So those are a few things in terms of practice. There's one other thing that I would mention, and it is, while doing practice, you need to take pauses. You need to take pauses to just be aware, right? You do a few asanas, you pause, you check in. You feel what's going on a physical level, you feel what's going on an energy level, and you feel what's going on a mental level. You be present, right? You're not worrying about the next pose. You're not assessing or analyzing what you just did. You're just present. That presence, again, is creating another layer in the stability that we're trying to achieve. So that's on the mat, right? And then let's look at your life in general. A few things that we want to consider to create more stability in our daily lives. So just look at a life that isn't stable, right? And you can see it all around you. Maybe it's you right now. You know, we're in a pandemic time, so we don't know what our futures are going to look like. They seem to be changing from week to week, month to month in terms of planning and social restrictions and these sorts of things. So we're not living in very stable times. I would argue a structured daily routine is really, really important. I know it sounds boring, but if you can structure your life in such a way that you're getting up at the same time, going to bed at the same time, eating regular meals at the same time, ideally, then your body gets into a nice routine. That routine is stability for your physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual body. And on that note, connecting with the circadian rhythms, there's this whole new research coming around on circadian rhythms. So getting to bed early-ish, say around 10, and getting up 6-ish, at sunrise if you can, or around that time. When you start to realign with the circadian rhythms, the natural rhythms of our flow, then everything starts to get a little bit more stable in your lives, right? You'll start to layer in those aspects of eating at regular times, getting up, going to bed at regular times, these sorts of things. So that stability in your daily routine is going to create stability in your life. There's one last thing I'd like to mention as well, and that is around boundaries. Our lives are complicated, necessarily so. If we can create boundaries and protect time for ourselves to look after ourselves, this is really, really important. So stability in your life includes being able to say no to things, being able to stand up to inputs that aren't helpful for you, to say no or to walk away. That is a capacity building thing that will create so much stability in your life and make you feel a lot better in the long run than perhaps you have if you don't have those boundaries, right? A simple recap. We do stability on the mat. We do that by having this strong connection in the pelvic region. And if you need some instruction on this, if it's not clear, reach out to me, okay? You can do Parshvottanasana, so 3/4 stride, hands to the hips or sacrum, folding comfortably, right? Do that dynamically, then hold. So that will be a real strong barometer gauge for your stability. You look at your life structure and create some routines, connect to the circadian rhythms, and then create some boundaries. These are all really important tools in your yoga toolkit to be more stable. A stable life is going to help you to make better decisions, to be more at peace and at ease with yourself, and to ultimately seek and find that freedom and fulfillment and joy that you're looking for. Thank you, and namaste.